No one from my family showed up to my graduation. Not my husband, not my kids. They all went to my brother's barbecue instead. But the moment I stepped off stage, my phone buzzed with a message from my husband. "We need to talk. It's urgent." I had 45 missed calls from him. There are moments in life that are supposed to be monumental. Moments you envision your loved ones cheering you on, their pride a tangible force. But what happens when that moment arrives, and the only sound you hear is the deafening silence of empty seats reserved just for them? I was 35, my hard-won master's degree clutched in my hand, standing on that stage, bathed in the harsh lights of an auditorium filled with strangers' celebrations. All I could see were 5 stark, empty seats in the audience, each one a gaping hole where my family should have been. 5 grueling years of night classes, working full-time, and raising 2 kids had led to this, and it felt utterly meaningless in that solitary moment. My achievement was everything to me, yet, apparently, nothing to them. The real gut punch came just after the ceremony, when my phone lit up with an urgent message from my husband, James. If you've ever felt that soul-crushing betrayal from the people who should have been your biggest supporters, then you know this pain. For the past 12 years, I had been married to James, a 37-year-old software developer with a stable job at a tech company in Seattle. We had 2 children, Leo, our 14-year-old son, deep in that typical teenage phase of finding his parents utterly embarrassing, and Mia, our bright 11-year-old daughter, whose social life was rapidly becoming her primary focus. We lived in a modest 4-bedroom house in the suburbs, not flashy, but comfortable, with a small backyard for the rare sunny days our city offered. My job as a financial analyst at Franklin Financial Services was demanding, often requiring 50-plus hours a week. I was good at it, precise with numbers, patient with difficult clients. But year after year, I watched as male colleagues, with less experience, got promoted ahead of me. "You need more credentials," my boss would state during my reviews. "A bachelor's is great, but everyone has that. If you want senior management, you need a master's." After the 3rd time being passed over, I made up my mind. I would get that MBA, no matter what it took. The university across town offered evening classes designed for working professionals. It would take 5 years of part-time study, but I believed it was worth the investment in my future. What I didn't fully anticipate was how punishing the schedule would be. I'd wake at 5:30 a.m. to make breakfast and pack lunches, work a full day, then rush to class 3 evenings a week from 6 to 9 p.m. I'd come home exhausted, only to find dishes in the sink and homework still needing to be checked. Weekends meant locking myself in our home office for hours, while James took the kids to soccer games or birthday parties. "Mom's always studying," I once overheard Leo complain to his father. "She never has time for us anymore." Those words stung, but I rationalized it. This was temporary. This was for our future. Once I had my degree and the promotion, we'd have more financial stability, maybe even that family vacation to Disney World the kids had been begging for. My relationship with my brother, Daniel, complicated things further. 3 years older than me, Daniel had always been the golden child. He ran a successful real estate business, lived in a waterfront property, and as a bachelor with no children, he enjoyed the freedom to travel extensively and indulge in expensive hobbies. Our parents, 2 states away in California, never tried to hide their preference. Growing up, they attended every one of his football games, but frequently missed my academic competitions. As adults, they'd drop everything to help Daniel renovate his kitchen, but found excuses when I needed someone to watch the kids during my final exams. "Your brother is just more fun to be around," my mother once told me, after I confronted her about the imbalance. "You're always so serious and busy with your responsibilities." The irony wasn't lost on me. Being responsible was somehow being held against me. Despite these frustrations, I persevered. I wrote papers after the kids went to bed, often until 1 or 2 a.m. I studied flashcards during lunch breaks. I sacrificed vacations, using that time to get ahead on coursework. When friends invited us to parties or weekend getaways, I usually declined. James was supportive at first, picking up some slack, encouraging me when I felt overwhelmed. But as the years dragged on, his patience began to wear thin. How much longer is this going to take? He'd ask. The kids barely see you anymore. Just 2 more years, I'd assure him. Then 1 more year, then just a few more months. By the time graduation approached, our marriage was strained. We still loved each other, but a distance had grown. James had developed his own routines and social circles, often taking the kids to community events or to visit his parents without me. I had missed so many family dinners, school performances, and weekend outings that it had become normal for them to function without me. Which is precisely why the graduation ceremony meant so much. It wasn't just about the degree or career advancement. It was a chance to show my family, especially my children, that all those sacrifices had been for something meaningful. I wanted them to see me walk across that stage, to feel proud of their mother, to understand that women could pursue education at any stage of life. I wanted that moment of recognition, that collective celebration that would make 5 years of exhaustion worthwhile. When I graduate, I told James 6 months before the end of my program, I want everyone there. You, the kids, my parents, even my sister Sarah from Phoenix. This is going to be a big day for all of us. He had nodded, squeezing my hand. Of course, babe. We wouldn't miss it for the world. How hollow those words would eventually sound. 6 months before my graduation ceremony, I began planning meticulously. The university sent details, including the limited number of guest tickets. I immediately requested the maximum allocation of 6, 1 each for James, Leo, Mia, my mom, my dad, and Sarah. I called my parents in California, giving them the date. We'll try our best to make it, sweetie, my mother said in a tone that suggested she was already considering alternatives. Still, I remained optimistic. This was my graduation. Surely, they'd prioritize it. Next, I reached out to Sarah in Phoenix. Unlike our parents, she seemed genuinely excited. I'm so proud of you, sis, she said. Working full-time, raising kids, getting a master's? You're superwoman. I'll book my flight next week. With family attendance seemingly secured, I turned to the celebration. I researched restaurants near the university, finding a highly rated Italian place called Bellissimo that could accommodate 8. It was expensive, nearly $300 for the reservation, but this was a once-in-a-lifetime occasion. I put down the deposit without hesitation. Since my parents would be traveling, I booked them a hotel room at the Marriott downtown using points. Everything was falling into place. For once, I allowed myself to feel excitement rather than stress. 2 months before graduation, I splurged on a new dress, a sophisticated navy blue sheath. I scheduled appointments for hair, makeup, and a manicure. These were luxuries I rarely indulged in, always prioritizing family expenses, but I wanted to look and feel my best. Mom, you look pretty, Mia said when I tried on the dress, like when you and Dad got married in those pictures. Her comment brought tears to my eyes. I couldn't remember the last time I dressed up for anything other than work. The daily grind had left little time for personal vanity. 3 weeks before graduation, the first hint of trouble appeared. Daniel called to catch up, something he did sporadically when he remembered he had a sister. After perfunctory questions about my studies, he dropped a bombshell. By the way, I'm throwing a massive barbecue at my place on May 15th. Just installed a new outdoor kitchen. Want to break it in? You guys should come. The kids would love the pool. My stomach dropped. Daniel, that's my graduation day. I told everyone months ago. There was a pause. Oh, right. I forgot about that. Can you change your barbecue to another weekend? I asked, trying to keep my voice level. Not really, he replied, sounding unconcerned. I've already invited like 30 people, including clients who are only in town that weekend. But hey, when does your ceremony end? Maybe you can stop by afterward. I felt my blood pressure rising. The ceremony is at 2 p.m., probably goes until 5. Then we have dinner reservations. But that's not the point. My family is supposed to be at my graduation. Come on, Chloe, Daniel said with that dismissive tone he had perfected since childhood. It's just a graduation. You already had one for your bachelor's. This is just a piece of paper saying you took some extra classes. I was speechless. Just a piece of paper? 5 years of sacrifice reduced to some extra classes. Before I could formulate a response that wasn't purely profanity, Daniel continued, "Look, Mom and Dad are coming to my barbecue. They already confirmed. And they're bringing Aunt Susan and Uncle Joe, who are visiting from Florida. You know how rarely we see them." Now I was truly seeing red. "You told Mom and Dad about your barbecue before checking with me about the date? Even though you knew my graduation was coming up?" "I didn't realize it was such a big deal," he said defensively. "You're 35, not 22. It's not like this is your first rodeo." We argued for another 10 minutes, Daniel refusing to budge and me growing increasingly upset. By the time I hung up, I was shaking with anger, fighting back tears. I immediately called my mother, hoping she would see reason. "Mom, Daniel scheduled a barbecue on my graduation day. You can't go to that instead." Her response was infuriatingly diplomatic. "Oh dear, what bad timing. Can you both reschedule?" "No, Mom. The university doesn't change commencement dates for individuals. This has been planned for a year. I told you about it 6 months ago." "Well, it's just so difficult," she sighed. "Your aunt and uncle will be here, and you know your father loves Daniel's barbecues. Can't we come to both?" The conversation went downhill from there, with my mother suggesting I was being selfish for not understanding the family's desire to attend both events, as if that were physically possible with the timing and distance involved. That evening, I tearfully recounted the conversation to James, expecting his unwavering support. He listened attentively, rubbing my back as I expressed my hurt. "Your family has always been like this," he said soothingly. "But hey, you'll still have us there cheering you on. Me and the kids will be your fan club. That's what really matters, right?" His words calmed me somewhat. He was right. As long as my immediate family, my husband and children, were there, I could handle my parents' predictable preference for Daniel. After all, James and the kids had witnessed the daily struggle, the late nights, the stress, the missed family events. They understood what this achievement meant to me. "Promise me you three will be there," I said, looking into his eyes. "No matter what." "I promise," James replied, kissing my forehead. Nothing could keep us away. I wanted desperately to believe him. The day before graduation arrived with a flurry of last-minute preparations. I picked up my cap and gown, carefully hanging them in our bedroom. I polished my best shoes, a pair of black pumps both professional and comfortable enough to walk across a stage. I charged my phone and camera, determined to capture memories. My excitement was tinged with anxiety. Despite James's assurances, I couldn't shake the feeling that something would go wrong. I had received a formal email from my parents 2 days earlier, explaining in overly polite language that they'd be attending Daniel's barbecue instead of my graduation. They promised to take me to dinner the next time they were in town to celebrate. I'd read it once, then deleted it without responding. Sarah had also backed out, calling with genuine regret to explain her youngest had come down with chickenpox, making travel impossible. I understood her situation, but it still added to my growing sense of abandonment. "At least I still have you three," I said to James as we prepared dinner that evening. He nodded distractedly, focused on his phone. I noticed he'd been texting frequently throughout the day, but thought nothing of it until my own phone rang. It was my mother. "Chloe, I just wanted to call and see if the kids are still coming to Daniel's tomorrow. He's setting up games for all the children, and Mia and Leo are on his list." I nearly dropped the pot of pasta I was draining. "What?" "No, Mom. The kids are coming to my graduation with James." "Oh," she sounded confused. "Daniel said James mentioned bringing them to the barbecue. There will be several families there with children their age, and Daniel hired a lifeguard for the pool. They'd have much more fun than sitting through a long ceremony." My hands were shaking as I sat down the pot. I looked at James, who was suddenly very interested in chopping vegetables. "Mom, I need to go," I said abruptly and ended the call. The silence in the kitchen was deafening until I broke it. "James, why does my mother think you and the kids are going to Daniel's barbecue tomorrow?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. I might have mentioned to Daniel that the kids were asking about the party. They heard about the pool and games from their cousins. "And you told him you were bringing them without discussing it with me first?" James finally looked up, his expression a mixture of guilt and defiance. "Chloe, be reasonable. The ceremony is going to be 3 hours of sitting quietly while hundreds of names are called. The kids will be bored out of their minds. So instead of teaching them about supporting family and celebrating achievements, you're teaching them that fun always comes first? My voice was rising despite my efforts to stay calm. This graduation represents 5 years of sacrificing time with them to build a better future for us. Do you not think it's important for them to see that hard work pays off? James sighed heavily. Of course, I do, but the kids really want to go to the barbecue. Leo's been talking nonstop about swimming with his cousins, and Mia heard her friend Jasmine from soccer will be there. Daniel invited her whole family. So, what are you saying? I asked, though I already knew the answer. That you want to take our children to a barbecue instead of watching their mother graduate with honors? Can't we compromise? James suggested, his tone irritatingly reasonable. Maybe I take the kids to the barbecue and we meet you at the restaurant afterward? Or I could come to the ceremony alone and pick you up after dropping the kids at Daniel's. I stared at him in disbelief. Do you hear yourself? This isn't about negotiating a business deal. This is about being there for me on one of the most important days of my life. You're being dramatic, James muttered. It's just a graduation ceremony. Just a graduation ceremony. The exact words Daniel had used, as if my accomplishment was trivial, a minor inconvenience in their social calendars. 5 years, James, I said, my voice quivering. 5 years of missing bedtimes, of studying until 2 a.m. Of using every vacation day for exams instead of family trips. 5 years of you complaining about my absence, of the kids feeling neglected, of me carrying guilt on top of exhaustion. And now that it's finally over, now that I want one day, just one single day of recognition and support, you are all too busy with the barbecue. The kids should be able to decide for themselves, he countered. They're 14 and 11. Of course, they'd choose a pool party over a graduation ceremony. That's why parents make decisions based on values, not on what's more fun. The argument escalated. Leo and Mia came downstairs, drawn by our raised voices. When they realized what we were fighting about, they predictably sided with their father, Leo declaring that only nerds care about graduation ceremonies, and Mia tearfully asking why I wanted to ruin their fun. I went to bed that night without eating dinner, too upset to stomach food. James slept on the couch, a rare occurrence in our marriage. As I lay awake staring at the ceiling, I wondered how we had reached this point. How had my family become so disconnected from my life, so dismissive of my achievements? The irony was painful. I had pursued this degree primarily for them, to provide a better lifestyle, to be a role model of determination. Yet, they couldn't give me a single afternoon of support in return. I cried silently into my pillow, mourning not just tomorrow's inevitable disappointment, but something deeper, a fundamental misalignment in how my family and I valued each other's lives. Sleep evaded me until the early hours. My graduation outfit hung like a ghost in the corner, a symbol of tomorrow's empty celebration. I woke up disoriented after just a few hours of restless sleep. For a moment, I forgot about the previous night's argument, my mind automatically shifting into graduation day excitement. Then, reality crashed back. I reached across the bed to find James's side empty and cold. Dragging myself to the bathroom, I splashed cold water on my puffy eyes, trying to summon some enthusiasm. This was still my day, my achievement. I wouldn't let their absence ruin it completely. Downstairs, the house was eerily quiet. No sounds of breakfast, no cartoons, no bickering children. On the kitchen counter sat a hastily scrawled note. Took the kids to Daniel's early to help set up. We'll try to make it back for your ceremony. Congratulations, James. The note felt like a physical blow. Not even a proper goodbye, just an afterthought. I crumpled it and threw it in the trash, then made myself a cup of coffee with trembling hands. The clock read 9:30 a.m. My hair appointment was at 10 o'clock, followed by makeup at 11 o'clock. The ceremony began at 2 p.m., with graduates required to arrive by 1 o'clock for lineup. Despite the hollow feeling in my chest, I forced myself to follow the schedule. The hairstylist commented on my subdued mood, but professionally avoided prying. The makeup artist did her best to conceal my swollen eyes and pale complexion, creating a polished look that contrasted sharply with my inner turmoil. Back home, I carefully put on my new dress, straightened the cap on my newly styled hair, and adjusted the gown zipper. I took a selfie in the full-length mirror, trying to smile, trying to feel something beyond the hurt. I posted it to social media with a caption about achieving goals and tagged my family members, out of habit or perhaps spite. Congratulatory comments began immediately, coworkers, distant relatives, old high school friends, all expressing pride and excitement. Everyone except those who mattered most. I texted James before leaving. "I'm heading to the ceremony now. Are you still planning to come?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then reappeared. Finally, Leo took a bad fall while running around the pool. Nothing serious, but lots of tears. Might be late. Save us seats if you can. I didn't bother responding. Seats were assigned by graduate name, with family seating general admission. There were no seats to save. James knew this. He'd read the information packet I'd left prominently on the kitchen counter for weeks. His message was just another flimsy excuse, another way to soften the blow. The drive to the university was a blur. I parked in the crowded garage and made my way to the auditorium. Around me, fellow students greeted family members, posed for photos, received flowers and hugs. I kept my head down, focusing on finding my place in the alphabetical lineup. My phone buzzed with messages of encouragement from Olivia, my closest work friend, and from Professor Hayes, my favorite instructor, who had written my recommendation letter for a senior analyst position. Their words were kind, but only emphasized the silence from my family. The graduates processed into the main hall to pomp and circumstance, an ocean of identical black gowns and square caps. From the stage, I scanned the audience, irrationally hoping to spot James and the kids slipping in late. The ceremony began with speeches from the university president, the dean, and a successful alum who spoke about perseverance and work-life balance, words that felt directed specifically at me. When my department was called, I rose with my row and waited for my name. In those moments of anticipation, I made a decision. I would enjoy this moment for myself, not for anyone else. I had earned this. Chloe Marie Williams, Master of Business Administration with honors. I walked across the stage with my head high, shook the dean's hand, accepted my diploma case, and moved the tassel on my cap from right to left. There was polite applause, the same as for every other graduate. No distinctive cheers, no special whistles, just the anonymous recognition of strangers witnessing another stranger's milestone. After returning to my seat, I felt oddly calm. The hurt was still there, but it had crystallized into something harder, something that felt like resolve. I sat through the remainder of the ceremony in a detached state, clapping automatically for my fellow graduates, while my mind wandered to what would come next. How I would address this betrayal with my family, what it meant for my marriage, for my relationship with my children, for my sense of self-worth. When the ceremony ended, graduates flooded the lawn outside for the traditional cap tossing and photos. I stood awkwardly at the periphery, watching families reunite. Flowers exchanged, champagne bottles popped. I took a few obligatory photos with classmates, but felt like an imposter in their joy. I checked my phone obsessively. No messages from James, no calls from the kids, nothing from my parents or Daniel. I scrolled through social media and saw that Daniel had posted photos of his barbecue, tagging my parents, James, and the children. They were all smiling, gathered around a fire pit roasting marshmallows. The timestamp showed it had been posted 30 minutes ago, right in the middle of my graduation ceremony. Something broke inside me. A dam of emotions I had been holding back all day. I found a quiet corner behind the science building and let myself cry, ugly, heaving sobs that smeared my carefully applied makeup and left me gasping for breath. When I finally composed myself, I decided to cancel the restaurant reservation. There was no point in keeping it now. As I pulled up the restaurant's number on my phone, a text message appeared from James. "We need to talk urgently." Immediately afterward, I noticed something that sent a chill through me. 45 missed calls from James, all within the past hour. My heart rate doubled instantly. 45 missed calls could only mean an emergency. Had something happened to one of the kids, to my parents? Had there been an accident? I had silenced my phone during the ceremony, as requested. In my emotional state afterward, I hadn't thought to check for missed calls, only messages. With shaking fingers, I called James back. He answered on the first ring. "Chloe, thank God," his voice high-pitched with panic. "I've been trying to reach you for over an hour." "What happened?" I demanded, already walking quickly toward the parking garage. "Is everyone okay?" "It's Leo," James said, his words tumbling out. He was climbing on that ridiculous new waterslide Daniel installed, showing off for his cousins, and he fell. "We're at Memorial Hospital. The doctor thinks his arm is broken." "I'll be right there," I said, breaking into a run despite my heels. "Is he in a lot of pain? How bad is it?" "They gave him something for the pain, but he's pretty shaken up. He keeps asking for you." That last part sent a wave of conflicting emotions through me. On one hand, my maternal instinct kicked in, immediately desperate to reach my injured child. On the other, a small, bitter voice in my head noted that now suddenly my presence was essential. I drove to the hospital in a state of heightened anxiety, alternating between concern for Leo and residual anger at the entire situation. The graduation gown lay crumpled in my passenger seat, the cap tossed carelessly in the back. My diploma case sat unopened on the dashboard. Memorial Hospital was only 15 minutes from campus, but the drive felt interminable. I found parking and rushed inside, still wearing my navy blue dress, my carefully styled hair now falling loose. The emergency room was busy. I gave Leo's name at reception and was directed to Bay 7. Drawing back the curtain, I found a scene that stopped me in my tracks. Leo lay on the bed, his right arm encased in a temporary splint, his face tear-stained but calm. Around him stood not just James and Mia, but my parents, Daniel, and a doctor reviewing some x-rays. They all turned to look at me as I entered, expressions ranging from relief to guilt to something that looked uncomfortably like pity. "Mom," Leo called out, his voice small and childlike despite his teenage status. "You came." I moved immediately to his side, maternal instinct overriding everything else. "Of course I came, sweetheart. How are you feeling? What happened?" As I smoothed his hair back, the doctor approached. "Your son has a simple fracture of the radius," he explained, pointing to the x-ray. "Painful, but straightforward. We'll put a cast on it, and he should heal completely in about 6 weeks." I nodded gratefully, relief washing over me. A broken arm was serious, but manageable. Not life-threatening. Not permanent. "He was very brave," my mother interjected, patting Leo's leg. "Barely cried at all after the initial shock." I acknowledged her with a tight smile, but couldn't bring myself to engage further. The fact that they were all here, gathered around my son, when they couldn't be bothered to attend my graduation, felt like salt in an open wound. Daniel stepped forward, his expression contrite. "Thank God you got here, sis. The little man's been asking for you nonstop." Something in his casual tone, the ease with which he acted as if this were just a normal family gathering rather than the culmination of a profound betrayal, snapped what remained of my composure. "Thank God I got here?" I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. As opposed to where I was before? Graduating alone, while my entire family enjoyed a barbecue. An uncomfortable silence fell over the small space. James shot me a warning look, silently pleading for me not to do this here, not now. But 5 years of suppressed exhaustion, frustration, and hurt had reached a boiling point. "I just spent the most important day of my professional life completely alone," I continued, my voice trembling but clear. "No husband, no children, no parents, not even a single text message of congratulations, because a barbecue and a pool party were more important than 5 years of sacrifice and hard work." "Chloe," my father began, his tone placating, "this is hardly the time or place." "When would be a better time, Dad?" I asked, tears threatening again. "When I'm back to being invisible. When I'm back to being the responsible one who never gets acknowledged. When I'm back to putting everyone else first, while none of you can spare a single afternoon for me." My mother looked genuinely confused. "Honey, we didn't realize it meant this much to you." "It's just a ceremony," I repeated hollowly. "Just like it's just a degree, just an accomplishment, just my life." Daniel, clearly uncomfortable with the attention, attempted to deflect. "Look, What matters now is that Leo's going to be okay. This was an emergency situation. And if there hadn't been an emergency, I challenged him. Would any of you have regretted missing my graduation? Would you have even thought about me at all today? The silence that followed was answer enough. James stepped forward, placing a hand on my arm. Chloe, you're upset, and you have every right to be, but Leo needs calm right now. We can discuss this later. I looked at my son, who was watching the adult drama unfold with wide, anxious eyes. Mia stood beside him, chewing her lip nervously. They didn't deserve to witness this, to be caught in the crossfire of adult resentments. You're right, I conceded, taking a deep breath. Leo needs us to focus on him right now. I turned my attention fully to my son, asking him about the doctor's examination, making sure he understood what would happen next with the casting. I kept my voice steady and reassuring, compartmentalizing my hurt, as I had done countless times before. When the nurse came to take Leo for casting, I volunteered to accompany him, needing a break from the suffocating presence of everyone else. As we walked down the hallway, Leo leaning slightly against me, he spoke softly. I'm sorry I missed your graduation, Mom. I really wanted to go to the party, and Dad said it would be okay. I swallowed hard. It's not your fault, sweetie. Adults made those decisions, not you. But you're sad. Yes, I admitted, seeing no point in lying to him. I am sad. But I'm also very proud of myself, and I hope someday you'll understand why today was important. He nodded solemnly, his young face contemplative in a way that made him look suddenly older. I'm proud of you too, Mom, even if I didn't see you get your diploma thing. His simple words were the first genuine recognition I had received all day, and they meant more coming from him than they would have from anyone else. After Leo's arm was properly cast, we returned to find the emergency room bay empty, except for James. He explained that my parents and Daniel had gone to get coffee. Mia had accompanied them, apparently more interested in the hospital vending machines than her brother's medical procedure. The doctor says we can take him home, James said, handing me discharge paperwork. He has a prescription for pain medication we need to fill. I nodded mechanically, still operating in mother mode, prioritizing Leo's needs above everything else. I'll take him home. You can pick up the prescription. Chloe, James began hesitantly. About today, not now, I cut him off. Not in front of Leo. Just then, my phone rang. It was Olivia, my coworker, who had promised to attend the graduation. Chloe, where are you? I've been looking everywhere. I thought we were meeting by the fountain after the ceremony. I had completely forgotten our arrangement in the chaos. Olivia, I'm so sorry. I'm at Memorial Hospital. Leo had an accident. Oh my God, is he okay? Her concern was immediate and genuine. A broken arm. We're about to head home. Do you need anything? Company? Food? Someone to pick up prescriptions? Her thoughtful offers, in stark contrast to my family's behavior, brought a lump to my throat. Actually, would you mind coming over later? I could use a friend right now. Of course, I'll bring dinner. Text me your address. After ending the call, I noticed James watching me with an odd expression. Who was that? He asked. Olivia from work. She came to my graduation since no one else did, I replied pointedly. She's bringing dinner later. Before he could respond, my parents and Daniel returned with Mia, all carrying hospital cafeteria coffees and snacks. My mother immediately fussed over Leo's new blue cast while my father asked about follow-up appointments. Daniel hung back, uncharacteristically subdued. We're taking Leo home now, I announced. He needs rest. We'll come with you, my mother declared. You'll need help with dinner and getting him settled. No, I said firmly, surprising even myself with the forcefulness of my response. Thank you, but no. Olivia is bringing dinner, and I can manage my own son. The stunned silence that followed gave me a small, vindictive satisfaction. But we came all this way, my father protested. And we were planning to stay until tomorrow. You can go back to Daniel's, I suggested coolly. I'm sure the barbecue is still going on. I need some space right now. Daniel looked like he might object, but thought better of it. My mother appeared genuinely hurt, but for once, I couldn't bring myself to accommodate her feelings at the expense of my own. We parted awkwardly in the hospital parking lot, with promises to call tomorrow and check on Leo. James drove our car, with Leo carefully secured in the back seat and Mia, unusually quiet, beside her brother. I stared out the passenger window, physically and emotionally exhausted. At home, I helped Leo get comfortable on the living room couch with pillows propping up his arm and his favorite TV show playing. Mia retreated to her room, clearly sensing the tension. James hovered uncertainly, waiting for the inevitable confrontation. "I'm going to change," I said, gesturing to my graduation outfit. "Then we need to talk." Upstairs, I peeled off the navy blue dress that should have been associated with triumph, but now felt like a costume from a failed performance. I put on comfortable clothes, washed the smeared makeup from my face, and took several deep breaths before returning downstairs. James was in the kitchen, mechanically unpacking the prescription bag. He looked up when I entered. "Chloe, I know you're angry," he began. "Angry doesn't begin to cover it," I replied, keeping my voice low. "I feel betrayed, James, by you most of all." He had the decency to look ashamed. "I made a mistake. I thought the kids would have more fun at the barbecue, and I didn't realize how important the ceremony was to you." "How could you not realize? I've been talking about it for months. I specifically asked you to promise you would be there, all of you." "I know, and I'm sorry." When Daniel invited us, the kids got so excited, and it seemed like a harmless compromise at the time. "A compromise implies both parties agree," I said bitterly. "You made a unilateral decision to prioritize fun over supporting me." James leaned against the counter, running a hand through his hair. "You're right. I screwed up badly. But does one mistake erase 12 years of marriage? 5 years of me supporting you through your degree." "Supporting me?" I repeated incredulously. "You complained constantly about my absence. You made me feel guilty for studying. You took the kids to events without even trying to include me. And then on the one day I needed you to show up for me, you chose my brother's party instead." "That's not fair," he protested. "I've been juggling work and childcare and house maintenance while you were in class 3 nights a week. And I've been working full-time while studying nights and weekends for 5 years to build a better future for our family," I countered. "We've both made sacrifices, James. The difference is that I would never, ever have missed an important milestone of yours." The truth of that statement hung between us. James knew I was right. For all his complaints about my absence, I had always shown up for his important moments, rearranging my study schedule, missing classes if necessary. "What do you want me to do?" he asked finally. "How do I fix this?" I shook my head slowly. "I don't know if you can fix it immediately. I need time to think about what this means for us, about whether I can trust you to value me and my accomplishments." "Are you saying you want a separation?" Alarm crept into his voice. "No," I clarified. "I'm saying I need space to process what happened today. I'm going to stay at the hotel I booked for my parents, just for a week. I need to clear my head." "A week, Chloe, be reasonable. Leo has a broken arm. He needs his mother." "Leo has a father who apparently is perfectly capable of making decisions without consulting me," I replied sharply. "He'll be fine for a few days with you in charge. I'll check in on him daily and come back if there are any complications." James looked like he wanted to argue further, but seemed to realize he was in no position to deny me this request. "When will you leave?" "After Olivia brings dinner and I explain things to the kids. I'll pack tonight and leave in the morning." As if on cue, the doorbell rang, announcing Olivia's arrival. She brought not only dinner as promised, but also a graduation gift, a beautiful leather portfolio embossed with my initials and a card signed by several coworkers. "We're so proud of you," she said, hugging me tightly. "You worked so hard for this." Her simple acknowledgement brought fresh tears to my eyes. This was all I had wanted from my family, this basic recognition of my achievement. After dinner, while Olivia helped James clear the dishes, I sat with both children to explain my temporary absence. I reassured Leo that I would check on him every day and that I wasn't leaving because of his accident. "I just need some quiet time to think," I told them. "Sometimes adults need space, just like you do when you get overwhelmed." Mia, more perceptive than I had given her credit for, asked directly, "Is this because we missed your graduation?" "Partly," I admitted, not wanting to lie to them. "I was very hurt by that. But this is more about me needing to figure out what I want going forward. It's not a punishment for anyone. It's just something I need. To my surprise, both children accepted this explanation with minimal protest. Perhaps they sensed the depth of my hurt, or perhaps they were simply exhausted by the day's events. Either way, they hugged me goodnight with extra fierceness, as if already missing me. The next morning, I packed a small suitcase and drove to the downtown hotel, checking into the room I had originally reserved for my parents. The irony was not lost on me. As I settled into the quiet space, I felt a strange mixture of grief and liberation. For the first time in years, I had put my own needs first. The guilt I had expected to feel was surprisingly absent, replaced by a newfound sense of self-respect. Over the next few days, I received a flurry of apologetic texts and calls. My parents left a tearful voicemail admitting they had been thoughtless. Daniel sent an elaborate flower arrangement to the hotel with a card acknowledging his selfishness. James called every evening, his tone increasingly desperate as he realized I was serious about this time apart. I spent the week reflecting on my relationships, my career goals, and what I wanted from the next phase of my life. I visited Leo daily, bringing small gifts and helping him adapt to one-armed living. I had lunch with Mia at her school, reassuring her that family challenges were normal and resolvable. I spoke with my boss about the senior analyst position, which had been unofficially offered to me upon completion of my degree. By the end of the week, I had reached several important conclusions. My family's behavior had revealed a painful truth about how they valued my contributions and aspirations, but it had also given me clarity about my own worth and the boundaries I needed to establish. When I finally returned home, I was ready for the difficult conversations that would reshape our family dynamics. 1 week after my graduation ceremony, I drove home from the hotel with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. The time alone had been transformative, allowing me to process my hurt without the constant pressure to forgive prematurely for the sake of family harmony. James was waiting for me on the front porch, a tentative smile on his face. He helped carry my suitcase inside, where the house was surprisingly clean and orderly. I later learned he had hired a cleaning service, a gesture that acknowledged how much domestic labor I typically shouldered. "The kids are at school," he said. "I thought we should talk privately first." We sat at the kitchen table, the scene of countless family meals and homework sessions. The familiar setting underscored how much had changed in just 1 week. "I've been thinking a lot about us," James began. "About how I've taken you for granted, about how I failed to support you when it mattered most." I nodded, appreciating his directness. "I've been thinking too, about what I need from this marriage going forward." "Tell me," he said. And for perhaps the first time in years, he seemed genuinely ready to listen. "I need respect for my accomplishments, not just lip service. I need a true partner who values my goals as much as his own and the children's. I need to stop being the default parent, the default housekeeper, the one whose needs always come last." James didn't become defensive as he might have before. Instead, he acknowledged the truth in my words. "You deserve all of that. I see now how I've been putting you last, even while complaining about your absence. It was unfair and hypocritical." We talked for hours, more honestly than we had in years. James revealed his own insecurities about my educational advancement, fearing I would outgrow him professionally. I shared my resentment over bearing the mental load of family management while pursuing my degree. We discussed practical changes, like hiring occasional help with housework and creating a fair division of parenting responsibilities. When the children returned from school, we had a family meeting. Leo, his cast now decorated with colorful signatures, sat solemnly as we explained that we were working through some challenges, but were committed to being stronger as a family. "Does this mean you're staying, Mom?" Mia asked, her voice small. "Yes," I assured her. "But it also means some things will be different. I'll be starting a new position at work soon with more responsibility, and everyone in this family needs to contribute more at home." To my surprise, both children readily agreed. Leo volunteered to take over lawn mowing duties once his arm healed, while Mia offered to be responsible for laundry sorting. They seemed almost relieved to have concrete ways to help maintain our household. Over the next few days, I had similarly forthright conversations with my parents and Daniel. I invited them over individually, not wanting to feel outnumbered. My parents arrived first, bearing gifts and apologies. My mother handed me a card containing a substantial check, clearly hoping to buy forgiveness. I returned it to her gently but firmly. "This isn't about money," I explained. "This is about recognizing a pattern that has existed my entire life. Daniel's events always take priority. His achievements are celebrated while mine are minimized." My father looked genuinely surprised. "We had no idea you felt this way, Chloe." "That's part of the problem," I replied. "You never asked. You never noticed." The conversation was uncomfortable, but necessary. I didn't demand dramatic promises or tearful apologies. Instead, I established clear boundaries for our relationship moving forward. I would no longer accept last-minute cancellations or secondary status in family priorities. I would no longer exhaust myself trying to earn approval that was freely given to my brother. Daniel's visit was equally revealing. Without the buffer of our parents or my children, he was forced to confront his role. "I never intentionally tried to overshadow you," he insisted. "Intent doesn't erase impact," I countered. "Your barbecue could have been scheduled for any weekend. You chose my graduation day, then refused to change it." To his credit, Daniel didn't make excuses. "You're right. I've been selfish. I think I've gotten used to being the center of attention in this family." We reached an understanding that would require ongoing effort to maintain. I didn't expect decades of patterns to change overnight, but I was no longer willing to accept being an afterthought in my own family story. The weeks that followed brought gradual healing. Leo's arm mended steadily, a visible reminder of how resilience can follow injury. My promotion to senior analyst came through, complete with a significant salary increase and a private office. The extra income allowed us to hire a weekly cleaning service, relieving some of the domestic burden that had contributed to my exhaustion. James followed through on his promises, taking on more parenting responsibilities and making a point to celebrate my professional achievements publicly. The children, watching their parents model new behaviors, began showing more appreciation for my contributions both at work and at home. Perhaps the most meaningful gesture came a month after graduation, when Daniel organized a small surprise party specifically to celebrate my master's degree. He invited my close friends and colleagues, ordered a cake decorated with my university's colors, and gave a speech acknowledging my determination and intelligence. My parents attended, bringing a framed professional photograph of me in my graduation regalia that they had commissioned. It was a lovely evening, but its significance went beyond the celebration itself. It represented a shift in how my family perceived my accomplishments, a recognition that my milestones deserved the same attention and respect as anyone else's. As I prepared to hang my diploma in my new office, I reflected on the unexpected journey that had followed my graduation day. What should have been a simple celebration had instead become a catalyst for profound change in my most important relationships. I had learned that sometimes the greatest gift of education isn't the degree itself, but the self-knowledge that comes with it. I had learned that standing up for myself didn't mean losing my family, but rather creating healthier connections based on mutual respect. I had learned that setting boundaries, though initially painful, ultimately allows for more authentic relationships. Most importantly, I had learned that my worth was not determined by others' recognition, but by my own sense of accomplishment and integrity. The empty seats at my graduation had initially felt like rejection, but they had ultimately led to a fuller understanding of my own value and the courage to demand that others recognize it, too. Sometimes, the deepest wounds carve the path to our most profound growth. They force us to see our own worth, independent of anyone else's validation. And in that moment, we learn to be our own fiercest cheerleader. Sometimes, the deepest wounds carve the path to our most profound growth. They force us to see our own worth, independent of anyone else's validation. And in that moment, we learn to be our own fiercest cheerleader. That revelation, born from the ashes of my graduation day, wasn't a sudden burst of sunshine, but more like a stubborn seed finally cracking open in hard soil. It was messy, it was painful, and it required me to keep showing up for myself, even when every instinct screamed to retreat or to smooth things over for others. My week in that hotel, the one I'd booked for my absent parents, was a crucible. I processed the raw grief, the anger, and the deep-seated disappointment, but also a quiet, fierce determination. I wasn't just grieving a lost celebration. I was grieving a version of my family I'd clung to, a version where my achievements were met with equal enthusiasm and support as Daniel's. Coming home was less of a triumphant return and more like stepping onto a freshly tilled field. The ground was soft, ready for new planting, but also unstable. James was there, genuinely remorseful, his efforts to create a clean and orderly home a silent testament to his understanding, however late. We sat at the kitchen table, the very same spot where so many hurried meals and homework battles had occurred, and we talked. Really talked. For hours. It wasn't about blame, not entirely. It was about laying bare years of unspoken resentments, of miscommunications, of two people slowly drifting apart under the weight of uneven expectations. He confessed his fear that my ambition meant I would leave him behind, that my education would make me too good for our life together. It was a painful admission, but an honest one. I, in turn, laid out the emotional toll of carrying the mental load, the invisible labor of remembering doctor's appointments, coordinating schedules, planning meals, all while trying to ascend a corporate ladder. The conversations were exhausting, raw, sometimes punctuated by tears, but utterly vital. We established a plan, regular check-ins, a shared calendar for family duties, the continued cleaning service, a true godsend, and, most importantly, a commitment to actively celebrate each other's successes, big or small. Explaining my temporary departure to Leo and Mia had been surprisingly easier than I anticipated. When Mia asked if it was because they missed my graduation, I hadn't sugarcoated it. Partly, I'd said, my voice gentle. I was very hurt by that. But this is more about me needing to figure out what I want going forward. It's not a punishment for anyone. It's just something I need. Their solemn nods, their extra fierce hugs, told me they understood more than I'd given them credit for. They were tired of the tension, too. Over the next few weeks, the new routines slowly began to take root. James took Leo to his physical therapy appointments for his arm without me having to remind him. He started cooking dinner twice a week, not just ordering takeout, but actually following recipes. Mia, true to her word, sorted laundry with a diligence that bordered on obsession, while Leo, once his cast came off and his arm regained strength, meticulously mowed the lawn. The household felt lighter, more balanced. They weren't perfect, of course. There were days James forgot to load the dishwasher, or Mia left her socks under the couch. But instead of internalizing it or letting it simmer, I'd address it calmly, reminding them of our agreement, and more often than not, it would be rectified without an argument. This was a new muscle I was building, speaking my needs without guilt. My parents and Daniel were a different story. Their initial attempts at reconciliation were classic. My mother's substantial check, which I gently but firmly returned, was her go-to solution for anything uncomfortable. This isn't about money, I'd explained, my voice steady despite the tremor of residual hurt. It's about recognizing a pattern that has existed my entire life. Daniel's events always take priority. His achievements are celebrated, while mine are minimized. My father's genuine surprise, "We had no idea you felt this way, Chloe," made me realize just how adept I'd become at internalizing my disappointments. "That's part of the problem," I'd replied. "You never asked. You never noticed." It was a painful conversation, not punctuated by yelling, but by the quiet weight of unspoken truths finally being given air. I didn't demand a dramatic apology, but I set clear boundaries. I would no longer be available for last-minute favors if it meant compromising my own schedule. I would not allow them to prioritize Daniel's convenience over my needs. And if they couldn't respect that, then our interactions would be limited. The call was in their court. Daniel, surprisingly, was more introspective. "I never intentionally tried to overshadow you," he'd insisted during his visit. "Intent doesn't erase impact," I'd countered, remembering the searing pain of his "just a piece of paper" comment. "Your barbecue could have been scheduled for any weekend. You chose my graduation day, then refused to change it." He sat there, his usual boisterous energy subdued, and admitted, "You're right. I've been selfish. I think I've gotten used to being the center of attention in this family." It was a fragile truce, an acknowledgement of a dynamic that had existed for decades, and one that would require ongoing effort to maintain. I knew I couldn't undo 35 years of family history in a week, but I had laid the groundwork for change. Professionally, the promotion to senior analyst was everything I had worked for. My new office, a small but quiet sanctuary with a window overlooking the city, felt like a physical manifestation of my hard-won success. The work was challenging, demanding, but now, crucially, I wasn't doing it alone. The increased salary certainly helped, not just with the cleaning service, but also allowing us to build a small buffer in our savings, something that always brought a sense of security. I could afford the occasional guilt-free splurge, too, like a new pair of running shoes or a weekend pottery class just for me. These small acts of self-care felt revolutionary. Months passed. My family, though still imperfect, was slowly but surely adapting. James was more engaged, more present. Our evenings now included actual conversations about our days, not just logistics. He'd even surprise me with a date night, something that had fallen by the wayside during my degree. He actively listened when I spoke about my work, asking thoughtful questions. It wasn't a seamless transformation. There were moments of forgetting, moments where old habits resurfaced. But now, when he'd slip into old patterns, I'd gently but firmly call him on it, and he'd genuinely apologize and correct course. It felt less like I was nagging and more like I was guiding a partner who truly wanted to be better. The kids, too, seemed to thrive in the new, calmer environment. Leo, once his arm was fully healed, discovered a passion for coding, spending hours on his computer, occasionally asking James for help, which became a new bonding activity for them. Mia, ever the social butterfly, started a small business making friendship bracelets, which she sold at school, proudly managing her earnings. They were seeing a mother who was not only successful in her career, but also present and happy at home. They saw a father who actively participated in their lives and supported their mother. The message was clear. Hard work, partnership, and mutual respect were values we lived by, not just talked about. My parents' and Daniel's journey was slower, more nuanced. My parents started visiting more frequently, but with a difference. They'd call ahead, asking if a particular weekend worked, instead of just announcing their arrival. My mother even volunteered to watch the kids for a weekend so James and I could have a mini vacation, something she would never have offered before. It wasn't about buying forgiveness anymore. It was about genuine connection. Daniel, too, made an effort. He'd text me more regularly, just to chat, and when he was in town for business, he'd suggest a casual dinner, just the two of us. He even offered career advice sometimes, devoid of the usual condescension. The competitive edge between us softened, replaced by a tentative, adult-sibling bond. But then, as always happens in life, a new challenge emerged, one that would truly test the depth of the changes we'd all made. My parents announced their 40th wedding anniversary. My mother, in a rare moment of proactive planning, called me specifically, asking my availability before settling on a date. Progress. We landed on a weekend in October, and she immediately launched into plans for a small, intimate family gathering at Daniel's waterfront home. My stomach, despite everything, gave a familiar lurch. Daniel's home, with its endless amenities and my parents' unwavering preference for him, was always a potential minefield. "Chloe, darling," my mother chirped, "Daniel is so generously hosting. He's planning a lovely dinner and then a brunch the next day. All the family will be there. Aunt Susan and Uncle Joe are coming up again, and Sarah is flying in from Phoenix." I paused, taking a breath. "That sounds lovely, Mom. James, the kids, and I would be happy to come. But I do have a few conditions." The line went silent for a moment. "Conditions?" she asked, her voice tinged with the familiar hint of irritation. "What kind of conditions?" "Just simple ones," I said, keeping my voice even. "First, we won't be staying at Daniel's. We'll book our own hotel. I appreciate his generosity, but we prefer our own space and a bit of quiet with the kids." A beat of silence. "Second, we'll attend the dinner and possibly the brunch, but we won't be expected to entertain or stay for the entire weekend, especially since Leo and Mia have their own activities." And finally, and this is important, I expect equal participation and attention for all family members. This isn't Daniel's party, it's your anniversary. And I won't tolerate any condescending remarks about my work or life choices from anyone. My mother spluttered slightly. Chloe, that's very direct. Are you implying Daniel would be condescending? No, Mom, I said gently. I'm stating my expectations for a respectful family gathering. If those aren't met, we'll respectfully leave. To my surprise, she didn't argue further. She simply said, well, I'll talk to Daniel. I suppose that's reasonable. And she hung up. I exhaled, my heart thumping. It was uncomfortable, yes, but I hadn't backed down. And that felt like a victory in itself. I immediately told James about the conversation. He listened, then wrapped his arms around me. Good for you, Chloe. You handled that perfectly. And you know what? I'm looking forward to that hotel room. His support, solid and unwavering, was a balm to my soul. The anniversary weekend arrived. We checked into a charming boutique hotel a short drive from Daniel's. When we arrived at his house for the anniversary dinner, I felt a familiar tension, but it was different this time. It was external, not internal. My parents greeted us warmly, and Daniel, to his credit, seemed to be on his best behavior. He made a point of talking to James about his work, and even engaged Leo and Mia in a conversation about their hobbies, not just about sports. My mother, bless her heart, even made sure to ask me about my latest project at work, a genuine interest in her voice. Aunt Susan, however, ever the family gossip, couldn't resist. Chloe, dear, she said, sidling up to me with a glass of wine, it's so wonderful to see you. And Daniel tells me you're doing so well at your new job. It must be so challenging, juggling work and family, especially with that master's degree. Are you sure you're not overworking yourself? You look a bit tired. The old Chloe would have smiled politely, mumbled an excuse, and let the comment sting. But the new Chloe took a deep breath. Thank you for your concern, Aunt Susan, I said, my voice clear and polite, but I'm actually thriving. I love my work and James, and I have a great system for balancing everything at home. It's challenging, yes, but also incredibly fulfilling. And the tired you see is probably just the glow of a woman who finally feels recognized and respected. I met her gaze evenly. Aunt Susan, taken aback, merely nodded, then found an urgent need to refresh her drink. It was a small moment, almost imperceptible to others, but it meant the world to me. I had stood my ground, not with aggression, but with quiet confidence. James caught my eye from across the room and gave me a subtle, proud nod. Even Daniel, who had overheard the tail end of the conversation, winked at me. The rest of the weekend was surprisingly pleasant. We enjoyed the dinner, caught up with Sarah and other relatives, and left after brunch on Sunday, feeling refreshed and content, rather than drained. As we drove away, Leo said from the back seat, "That was actually pretty fun, Mom. Daniel's waterslide is awesome, but the food was really good too." Mia added, "Yeah, and Grandma actually asked me about my friendship bracelet business." James reached over and squeezed my hand. See? Progress. It wasn't a perfect family. Far from it. Old habits die hard, and there were still moments of frustration and miscommunication. But the dynamics had shifted irrevocably. My parents, while still prone to favoring Daniel, now made a conscious effort to include me, to celebrate my successes, and to understand my perspective. Daniel, stripped of his automatic, golden child status, became a more empathetic, less competitive brother. Our relationship was now based on mutual respect, not just unspoken rivalry. And James and I, we were a stronger team than ever, having navigated a profound crisis and emerged with a deeper understanding and appreciation for each other. That diploma, once a symbol of solitary achievement and deep family pain, now hung proudly in my new office. It wasn't just a piece of paper, it was a testament to resilience, to the courage to choose myself, and to the power of demanding what you deserve. It was a reminder that sometimes the greatest lessons aren't learned in a classroom, but in the challenging, messy, and ultimately rewarding journey of standing up for your own worth. My family hadn't been there for the graduation, but their absence had forced me to graduate into a new, more authentic version of myself. And that, in the end, was the greatest celebration of all. It was a celebration of my own growth, my own voice, and the beautiful, imperfect family that was slowly learning to celebrate it with me.